need. So your point is well taken, and those issues are being addressed in other ways.
Okay. All right. No other comments from members of the committee. First person signed up to address us on this issue is Mr. Matthew Cardinale.
Good afternoon, everybody. Matthew Charles Cardinale, news editor of the Atlanta Progressive News and the Vice Treasurer of Fulton Atlanta Community Action Authority. As you know, Mr. Bond, Chairman Bond, I have followed this issue quite closely. The first thing that I would like to say is that I don't think that action should be taken on this today. When you had your legislation, you thought that it was appropriate to have a work session, a roundtable discussion, and those things occurred before any vote was taken. This legislation has not gone through a committee cycle. The public has not had the opportunity to look at the legislation until it was placed on that table probably within the last 30 minutes. So I really think that the public, should have the opportunity to vet this, look at it for one committee cycle before action is taken. I mean, I am making public comment here, and I'm going to do my best, but I think for public comment opportunity to be meaningful, we should have had the opportunity to look at this legislation and develop our comments in a reasonable amount of time. That's first of all. When I founded the Atlanta Progressive News, some of you may not know, we had a print publication at one point. And at one point, we were working with the Metro Atlanta Task Force for the Homeless to have what we called the Street Vendor Program. And it didn't go so well. It was actually very time-consuming, and we let that whole thing go. But at one point, I did look up in the city code that there is a provision for newspapers, for publications, to be able to sell print copies of the publication. And I was wondering if someone from the law department could let me know how this would impact the ability of newspapers to continue to sell copies of their print publication, if that's okay.
I think so.
This legislation would only impact your ability to sell within 15 feet of certain areas, meaning an ATM machine, meaning a business entrance, but other than that, there's no problem with selling your newspapers. I mean, it's very limited locations where either people would feel vulnerable, having been asked to take out their wallet, or you would be interfering with ingress and egress from buildings.
I mean, because I think even, what is the Muslim newspaper, the Final Call, and I believe they sell that in front of the 5 Points MARTA station, and I just want to make sure that that could still go on, if we could put some thought into that and making sure that that's not, because that's an important part of freedom of the press and going back to the Constitution. I am pleased that, let me say something about the good things that I see in here. I am pleased that the tourist triangle garbage is now in the garbage where it belongs, and I am glad that the Martin Luther King area garbage is also now in the garbage. I mean, that was, according to Jerry Weber, law professor at Emory University, not constitutional. And I was so hoping I could bring that case against the city of Atlanta. I'm happy to see that that's taken out. I mean, because that was basically saying you don't have your First Amendment rights in certain, neighborhoods of the city, and that was wrong. So that's a good thing that I see here. One of the concerns that I raised about your legislation that passed regarding the aggressive panhandling was I felt that it was wrong to increase the penalty when the existing penalty wasn't being enforced. So let me say that another way. If the existing penalty wasn't being enforced, we don't know whether it's effective or not because it's not being used. So I didn't think it was right to say 180 days or up to 180 days for a first offense when you know, we haven't been enforcing the lower penalties that were already in place. At the press conference, Mayor Reed talked about community service for a first offense, 30 days in jail for a second, and I believe 90 for a third. But upon reading this, and if you look at page 4 under D, penalties, they break this up, so there's under D there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 dealing with the penalties for any violation of the prohibitions on monetary solicitation in certain areas, and it says, upon conviction, the violator may be sentenced to one or more of the following: performance of up to 30 days community service, a monetary fine not to exceed $1,000, and/or imprisonment not to exceed 180 days. For 2, 3, and 4, which deals with first, second, and third offenses of the aggressive piece, again, we're talking about not and/or imprisonment not to exceed 180 days. Now, it's not required under D2. If you look at 3, here's where the requirement comes in: provided that the sentence must include a minimum of 30 days imprisonment. And here's where the 90 days comes in under 4, provided the sentence must include a minimum of 90 days in prison. But we're still giving the judge discretion to provide up to 180 days in prison for even a first offense of aggressive panhandling, and I think that's wrong.
That's an error, Mr. Cardinale, and we'll correct that, because it should be 90 days, because that's what we agreed upon. So it should be just 90 days.
So let me be clear on this. It says provide. So look at D4.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it. It says and/or imprisonment not to exceed 180 days.
180 days, provided the sentence
must include a minimum of 90 days imprisonment. So we just need to clean that up.
So there's a minimum requirement of 90 days, but the judge still has discretion to go up to 180.
No, we agreed of 90 days, I thought. So we'll make that correction.
Okay, apparently there's...
Pointed it out. Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify this. There's a section of the code, 1-8, that lays out what penalties can be for any violation of city law. And under 1-8, the language that you're seeing here in 1, 2, 3, and 4 is that that the judge has discretion, and he or she can look at community service, imprisonment, or a fine. And clearly the mayor has expressed administratively that he would like that to be community service. For repeat offenses, you still have that discretion, but there is a level of discretion that is now removed. The judge cannot, for a third offense, give less than 90 days imprisonment. He or she could give more than that. He or she could also give community service or some combination, but at a minimum, there must be 90 days of...
Oh, so that's the... Okay, I understand that. Okay.
And now that we all understand that, that's what I disagree with. So I think that, I'd like to believe that a judge wouldn't issue such a harsh sentence upon a first conviction of aggressive panhandling, or any conviction, whether it's 1st, 7th, or 19th of the monetary solicitation in certain areas. I would like to see this committee make some changes to the discretion that we're giving to the judge. I don't think a judge should be able to give a 180-day prison sentence for a first offense. I mean, the mayor just stood up there and said what a drain on resources that would be and how cruel that would be. So no, we're not mandating it. We're not mandating any prison sentence for a first conviction of aggressive. But we're saying that the judge could go up to 180. And I don't, and so, y'all are the governing body of the city of Atlanta. And I think that for a first offense, maybe, I don't think there should be any possibility of a prison sentence for a first offense. That's what I'm going to suggest. For a second offense, something lower than 180. And again, I mean, I'd like to believe that a judge wouldn't do this. I mean, most judges are sensitive to our taxpayer resources and things of that nature. But if you give the discretion to do it, then they can do it. And I don't think it's right. And again, as I said, we haven't been enforcing this in 7 years. So we don't know whether something lesser would work. And I think it's too much to say that they're going to have the discretion to go this far on a first offense of any of this. So again, I think it's lamentable that this is apparently being rushed through in this manner. I think the public should have time to vet this, think about it. Let's have a committee cycle to do that. And again, just anything that you could do to preserve and protect the rights of newspapers to vend their publications, like the final call. And if you could please take a look at these penalties that we're allowing judges to issue that I think are too high. And I got to say, I love not being rushed. This was really pleasurable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardinale. Next, we have Mr. Dave Walker.